You were born ready.
Always ready.
So 1 more minute and we can start. Okay? So as I said, we are going to be streaming live. Any questions can be asked through the chat, please. If it's not super important, do not open the mic so we don't disturb Kirill. Okay? And of course, any questions you can do it right away. We'll be uh, watching the chat, answering as many questions as possible. And at the end, we will have some time, 10, 15 minutes, so you can ask any questions, okay? So that's it. So it's time now, right? So it's 6 p.m.
Right.
It's
I
6
think I
p.m.
can.
And we are ready to start. Welcome, everyone. We start recording, as we said. Kirill is here with us. And today we are going to have this talk, another talk of the front-end community, front-end development community in Barcelona. Today we'll be building a multiplayer game with Firebase. Okay, and I hope this is the first of many to come meetups this year. Given the situation, I hope everyone is fine. We are already 37 people connected to this talk. Uh, I have to say we are being supported in many ways by Skylab and Ernie. So today we are streaming from Skylab, and Ernie Frontend community is always supporting us on these kind of events. Okay, and that's it. I will give now the mic to Kirill. Kirill, so you can present yourself, introduce yourself, and get it, man.
All right. Hello, everybody. Please let me know in the chat if you can see me, and I'm going to share my screen in 1 second. Let me know in the chat. Okay. Alex says we can. Perfect. So I'm going to monitor chat. I'll set things up in a way that I can see the last message. So feel free to ping me there or just talk to me if you want. Thanks a lot for inviting me. It's a pleasure. I love Barcelona, been there twice, had a great time. And today I'm going to talk about Firebase. Can everybody see my screen? Yes, perfect. Cool. So I don't have like slides, it's just a bunch of HTML, as you can see. We will build a simple multiplayer game with Firebase. And hopefully in the process, you will learn what Firebase is. Please let me know in the chat who is familiar with Firebase. And in one word, what your experience with Firebase is. And if you're not, just say like, never heard of it, that's also fine. So some people familiar a little bit, and some people never used it, right? Firebase is Google's app development platform. I actually work for Firebase. I'm working on the UI part in the console, so we'll use it today. But today I'm actually talking as a user, not as official representative, because I also use it. I really enjoy using it. The mission of Firebase is to help app developers succeed. And how do we do this? We have multiple products which improve developers' life. And today we're going to look at 5 of them. First of all, we're going to look at Auth, which allows you to set up authentication for your app easily. It will be pretty simple. I'll demonstrate. We'll use storage, which will allow you to let your users upload files without you having to set up any backend whatsoever. We're also use Firestore, which is a database which you can access right from the browser. And in the end, we'll upload resulting game to free hosting where you could attach a domain. We will start with creating the project. I just called Barcelona game. Let's see if it's available. Apparently, somebody already created the project called Barcelona game, so I just add some numbers. Let's see if this works. Yes. So I don't care that much about analytics, and the project is being created. While it's using, I'll show you what files I have. So what we're mostly interested in is this index.html file, where I'm going to code. I have HTML files with slides, and I have a node modules folder where I just installed Firebase tools like the CLI, and you will see me using it pretty soon. I'll open the terminal, and now when my project is created, I have to enable the products which I talked about. So you can see there is much more. There is some machine learning stuff, there are cloud functions, there is lots of analytics stuff and more things which we're not going to talk about, but if it sounds interesting, please go check it out after. Now I'm going to start with auth. So I'll enable authentication. I'll set it up in a way that users can sign in anonymously. Here we go. Let me enable that. But also there are like multiple other ways to log in. You can have users log in with a mail password, or probably everybody here used login with Google, login with Facebook, login with Twitter or GitHub buttons. This is also easy to set up, and we actually provide a UI which will render all the buttons for you, which is framework agnostic. For now, we'll just use anonymous, which will allow us to identify users uniquely. Next thing, I'll create a database. There are two types of database, but the default one is Firestore. I'll explain later how rules work, but the main idea is since anybody can access, write, and read to the database, to and from the database from the browser, it sounds like the security-wise, it's not very good. But we have a solution for that. We have rules which allow you to specify who and how and under what conditions can write and read to the database. For now, we're saying anybody can write and read unless it's August. So for 1 month, everybody can write and read, and I'm going to change this later. I'll use Europe for location, and now the database is being created. So the last thing we're going to create is storage. And while it's loading, I'll tell you about the game which I'm going to implement today. So I would call it a variation of 2/3 of average rule. Let me see if I can look it up. Yeah, so the idea is a bunch of people are asked to guess a number from 100, from 0 to 100. And the one who guesses number closer, the closest to 2/3 of average, that person wins. And it's really interesting because their ideal strategy would be to guess 0. Because if you think of it, if right now I think, okay, everybody will just produce random numbers. So 2/3 would be like 66.6. But then I think, okay, other people probably also think the same way. So many people will just go for 66.6. So I should take this into account, and I should take 2/3 of this, and then the average becomes 44. And I can iterate on this multiple times. And basically my guess would depend on how deep do I think people will think this through. And then for people who play first time, this average would be higher, and people who play a lot, it probably will go to 0 eventually. So while we talked, the database has created. This is the UI where we can see what's going on in the database. Right now we can see it's empty. And the last thing, I'm going to enable storage. I just hit get started. It also asked me about rules. I just agree with everything. And then in a few seconds, the storage will be ready. So right now we went through the setup process, and pretty much after this, we are done with the console. One last thing is I'm going to go to hosting and get some instructions which I can follow to deploy my site. Um, so the first thing it tells me to do, I have to install Firebase tools. So this is installed already. I did it before just to save time for everybody, and so people don't watch me installing something for like 15 minutes uh, because of PM. Next thing, you can log in, already done that. And the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to run Firebase init. So you run Firebase init in the folder where you will use Firebase. So right now there is nothing Firebase related here, but once I run the command, it will ask me which products am I interested in using. I'm going to say Firestore, hosting, and storage, all the projects which we enabled already. And next thing I'm asked which project they want to use. So I can create a new one, or I can use existing one, which is this one. So now it will take a few seconds and ask me several questions where they want to store the rules, which I talked about before, and a bunch of other things. I'll just basically agree to everything. It will generate an index file for me, which works. And now I should have a bunch of files in my folder. So right now I have hosting configuration, I have configuration for your rights and other stuff. I'm not going to go deep. If you like it, you can go and figure it out later. It also generated index file. So to look at it, I'm going to run another command, which is called Firebase serve, which will give me a URL where everything is run locally. So this is what's happening in index file right now. I'm going to close list of files, and I'm going to clean it up a little bit. So I don't need nothing, no styles. We still need body. We can see that Firebase is already including a bunch of JavaScript files. So those are all the tools which I need to talk to Firebase. We can see that I'm including the main Firebase JavaScript file, auth. Instead of database, I'm going to use Firestore, and then messaging I don't need, and then storage. So Firebase-wise, we're all ready. There is also this interesting file called init, and I'm going to go and look what's in there. And once I jump in, you can see there is all my configuration. So Firebase somehow knows that this is our project ID. There is like an API key and a bunch of other information I need to communicate with Firebase. So this is happening because once we run Firebase serve or we upload our files to hosting, it creates a special folder which is called double underscore, which contains all our project specific stuff. So without putting any secret keys or anything, we can just start working. And I'm going to use a thing called delete HTML, which is a view rendering framework. It's kind of a little bit like React or Angular or Vue, but much, much lighter. It only focuses on rendering. Please let me know in the chat if you're familiar, and if something doesn't make sense, also please let me know. But meanwhile, I'll demonstrate how it works. So I import two functions, where render is a regular function and HTML is a template literal tag. So here I'm using this syntax, which might be new to some people, where I'm using the name of the function before template literal. Now I can say h1, and I can say hello world. And the second argument for the render function is document body, or any element where we want to render the result. So now I'm going to go to localhost 5000 again, and now we can see that it rendered hello world. One thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create a state. Did anybody have a question? I heard somebody. Okay, never mind. So it's just an object which will mutate and then we will re-render. I'll show you how we do it. So we have a title which says like Barcelona, and now using template literate syntax, we can just put state title right here, and this will work, or it should work because I forgot const. Cool. So now I'm going to take this function which renders and I move it out to another function called re-render. So next time we want to re-render things, we don't have to specify the element and the template tag. So now I'm going to change the state. I just say LOL, and then I say re-render again. And once I do this, it will update the title automatically, and it will be smart about it. Once we have a big DOM tree, it would only update the nodes which require updating. With all that said, let's actually get to the Firebase part. We will start with getting unique user ID. So to do that, we are going to wrap the whole thing in another function because this operation is asynchronous. So I just call it init, and then I make function init async. This allows me to do asynchronous things using async await, which will save me a bunch of code. So to get user ID, I'm going to first log in the user. So I would go with Firebase auth. I get an instance of that. And then you can see there is the first method suggested is called send in anonymously. So once I call this, it will go to Firebase, it will get user information, and it will assign the user this unique ID. So because it's asynchronous, I'll await for it, and then the result will have a property user, and the result will have a property UID. So I assign it to UID, and just to confirm, we will render H2 displaying our ID, which we got from Firebase. Cool. And now when I refresh, I get this unique ID. So this unique ID is staying in cookies. So if I close this tab and I open it again, it starts as like JL. Here it is back. However, if I open like incognito window or if the domain changed, that then this ID would be different. However, if I enable logging in with, for example, Google or Twitter, or logging in by user and password, then I could get user ID, which is not just unique, but constantly assigned to user across devices. For now, just keep using anonymous function. So the next thing is we're gonna display a picture, we're gonna display an image, and just to demonstrate how storage works, I'll upload this picture, which is a map, to storage. So I go to console, I go to storage, and here we have an upload file button. So we can upload all kinds of files here. We can do it from the UI, but also we can do it through the API. So I can go with like Firebase storage, upload something, and then we can let our users upload the files. So now we can see that the file is there. So I can get it using the API. So I go with the source, and again, we'll have to await for it, and it will be Firebase dot. Last time it was auth, now it's storage. And then we specify the file name, which is map.png. And we're gonna get, okay, I have to get storage and I have to get ref, where I pass the file name. And after this, I can get download URL. So let's confirm that it works. And I'll just show you the URL, just so you understand how it looks like. So this URL will not be static. You can see it's long and it also has a token. So this means if I if some I can configure things in a way that only specific users have access to this file, and then the token generated will expire at a certain point, and you won't be able to get this image if you're not the user who is supposed to have this. So right now I'm just going to display this using image tag. And I just add an alt of map. And now you can see there is this map of Barcelona. I just got it from Google Maps. So the next thing I want to do is I want to make this map clickable, and I want anybody to be able to put their avatar on the map. So how do we do this? We add a click handler, and then we need a function which we call place me. So I pass this function here. I call it a function, and it will take just with normal JavaScript click. Event will be passed as an argument, which will have two properties, which we need. One will be offset X, and another one will be offset Y. Let me console log this just to confirm that it actually works. I'm going to open DevTools, and let's see if it works. So now I click on the map, and I get the coordinates of the click. So I click here, I get 7, 9. I click here, I get like larger numbers, which kind of makes sense. So now I'm going to get a Firestore reference, which is the database. So reminder, I can read and write to this database from the browser. So I'll get Firestore, Firebase.firestore. Firestore. Oh, just call it ref for reference. And I get a collection. Okay, let me call it collection. So collection, I just called points. So everybody will have their own point. So collection is basically a thing. You can think of it as an array. However, it's not actually ordered. So it's not an ordered array. It's more like, I guess, it's more like an object. So you can push any values by keys. So how do we do that? We go like collection.ref, and then in the ref we pass the key. We could actually use push if we want to add a new point, but I don't want one person to be able to add multiple points. I want one person to own their own point. So I will say ref, and I use user unique ID as a key for this object. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to say set, and then I pass an object which will go in a database. So things we're interested in is X coordinate, which is offset X, Y coordinate, which is offset Y, and then user ID. Cool. So now I'm going to delete this console log, and let's see if this worked. So I'm refreshing. I click on the image, and something went wrong here. So I'm going to look at what I did wrong. So what I did is, instead of ref, which is API for a different database, and I confused it, I'm supposed to use doc, because one collection has many documents. So we get the documents with this ID. Let me refresh now and see if this works. Cool. So there is no error, but how do we verify that there is an actual document type? So we go back to the database, and then in the UI, we can see a collection called point has been created, just like we called it here. And a document with my ID, as we remember, it's JLQ, same as we had on the page, has been added. So writing data to the database from the browser is basically that easy. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to get the points. So we will get my point first. So I get the document. and it has a property called onSnapshot. So this takes an observable, but if you don't know what an observable is, you don't have to worry about this. You can just pass a callback. So it will give us a connection. Every time a change happens in connection, it will call this callback, and then we can display it. Actually, in our case, it will give me a document. So I'll add a property called me, which will have X and Y coordinates. It will initially just be in the corner, but once it comes from the database, we will actually update it. We'll also have a UID property. Cool. So now I just go with state.me equals d.data. So we use the data method to get the actual X, Y, and UID. So one other thing we have to do is we have to re-render. And now we can display the result. So I'm going to wrap this image in a div. To make things simpler, I'll add width and height of 500 to the image, so we know that this is those are the coordinates which we are going to work with. And for the div, and please don't do inline styles on your real project, but it should be fine for a live coding session. We set the position to absolute. So now we're going to place my avatar, which can be just a simple div. Here, position should be relative. So I'll give it a position of absolute. And now we need the coordinates. So top would be state.me.x pixels, and then left should be state.me.y pixels. And then inside, I'll just put some kind of emoji or something so we can, I don't know what happened to, okay. Let's put a, yeah, let's put a fox. Now when we align it so it's nicer, let's see if it worked or if there are any errors, which of course also happens. Let me get, I don't know what happened to the thing. Cool. So I have my fox. I think I confused the X and Y somewhere. Yeah, so top should be Y and left should be X, of course. Cool. Now when I refresh, I should be able to move the foxy around. Cool. So this works. Now anybody can place their avatars there. So how do we allow everybody to do that? We're going to use Firebase hosting, and we're going to upload it so everybody can place their avatar. So I go with Firebase deploy. And once I run this, it will take around 10 seconds. I can make it faster by only deploying hosting, but for now, this should be fine. I'll deploy all the other files which we generated. So once this is done, it's going to generate a URL. So everybody can jump in, and let me share it in the chat. Cool. So we do have a question, is it possible to pass X and Y values to the styles without hard coding them? Kind of yes and no. So it's more of lit HTML question. It allows you to pass styles as an object. We are not going to do that right now, but you definitely cannot put it in a CSS file because they're dynamic, but there are nicer ways of doing the same. So I'm going to share the URL with everybody. So now everybody can go and place their foxes. Please do. Once I open this URL, note that my user ID, oh no, something doesn't work. Oh, I think I know what didn't work. Let me send a quick fix. So what's happening is once there is no data, we assign and define to state.me. So let me put a default value. Let's do state.me. Yeah, so I'll just keep default value. Let me re-upload it, and hopefully this will work now. So while it's uploading, please let me know if anybody has any other questions, ideas, thoughts. I'll look at the chat. This seems like it's still broken. It should be easy fix. Let me see. Cool. So it says cannot read property y of undefined. Let's see where it's happening. So it's saying state.me is undefined. Let's see if this works. So I'll just manually specify. Okay. I'll have to debug and see. Instead of would it work to simply add another state property simply called me? Instead of adding state, yeah, that's also possible. You can also check.
Hey, Kirill, you are muted, man.
Oh, okay. Sorry for that. I'm back. I just refreshed the wrong window. So let's see right here. So we can look at state, and it does not have me property. So what happened here? Oh, because I'm putting it in the wrong place. That explains that. So let me move the me property to actual state, not here. And now when I refresh, it actually should work. Looking at state.me, it's right here. No more errors, no more errors, perfect. Everything renders well. So I'm gonna remove debugger, and I'm gonna redeploy, and now it's gonna work. Cool. I'm gonna go check the chat while it's deploying. Oh, yes, I agree. Now the deploy is finished, and now let's see if finally we get the working version. Cool. So the image displays, I can move the Fox. So everybody please go to this URL, which I'm gonna share again because in Hangouts, in Google Meet, messages disappear for the new people. Cool, Pablo says working, perfect. So I'm going to go to the database, and now we can see many people are already moving things. It's interesting how you can see in real time how some people are updating their position and some people are adding new, but we now have like a bunch of foxes. So now let's display everybody. How are we gonna do that? We are going to use on snapshot, but not just on the document, but on the whole collection. So we will create a property called points on the state, which initially will be empty array, but later we will populate it with our data. Now I'm going to use on snapshot for the collection. So I'm going to say on snapshot, still takes a callback. It's a little bit different format now. Now it has a data, a docs property, which has which we can, as an array, we can map over it, and we can get data for all the documents. And then we just assign it to these dot points, state dot points. Next thing we have to re-render. And now we can display our foxes. Just to confirm everything works, I'm going to throw in debugger statement here. and I'm going to look what is in the points right now. So you can see just as we expected, all the data, XY coordinates, and user IDs. So 25 people placed their foxes. Let me remove the debugger. So now let me render those. It kind of will be similar to what we have already. So in lit.html, I'm gonna just use state.points.map, and then I have to, oops, Russian intrusion. So we get the point, and we can then get this, get the point, and then we return. Again, we have to use template literal tag right here. So it should be very similar, but instead of a fox, we will put, what can I put, like a red circle. So everybody else will just look like a red circle. And instead of state.me, I'm going to use point 1, y, and point x. Cool. So this should display all the points. Let's see if this works. This did not work. Let's see why. So I'm going to throw in debugger right here. Okay, this did not work because I'm looking at the wrong URL. I'm looking at the live version uploaded on hosting, but I should be looking in the local version, which is something I spent half of my life on doing probably. But yeah, so now you can see all the points are there. You can see some people went swimming and some people are in Barcelona. So when I was in Barcelona, I think I stayed somewhere here. So I'll just place my foxy here. Yeah, and then you can see how the database is real time. So the points are also moving in real time as you click. One interesting thing to know is let me throw in a breakpoint right here. So once I place myself, I actually get this called instantly. So it doesn't get to the database first. It actually calls it immediately because it already knows what the latest data is. So this is why moving myself is like very fluid. So now I'll explain the rules of the game. It's actually quarantine time. We all are supposed to do social distancing. So the goal of the game is to be as socially distant as possible from everybody else. So let's take a look at an example. So this point in the corner is doing really well. So the closest point to it is like pretty far away. But if you look, okay, so somebody just jumped in and spoiled it. So now this point is not the best probably like it was. Now it's lots of people went into that corner and that point is not doing great at all. So now okay, now I think like probably this point is doing pretty well, but hopefully everybody got the idea of how we're gonna do it. Uh, so it's really hard to guess how people will behave because yes, the most logical thing is to go in a corner because this way you're really far away. But the problem is many people will think so. So you have to be somewhere, maybe even in the center, but other people also can think so. So now we are going to do some geometry. So if you love geometry, please let me know in the chat. And we are going to calculate the closest point for each point. So again, for this point, we can find this one. For this point, we can find this one. For this one, it's this one, and so on. How are we going to do this? We are going to add a mean property. I'm not going to add it here. I'm going to do it here. So I map over the points. And first of all, I'll put it in a temporary intermediate variable, which I just call points. And now I'm going to do something terrible. So I already have a job, so I can do that. But generally, this problem can be solved much faster than quadratic, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to iterate over all points twice. For brevity and for quicker writing code, that should be fine. So I'm going to iterate over points. I'm going to map over them, and I'm going to return. So it will be the same point, but it will have a new property, which we call min. So min is the minimum distance to the closest point. How do we know what's the closest point? Well, we have to know how to calculate the distance. So I'll add a function called distance. And then what it's going to do is going to take 2 points, and it's going to use the Pythagorean theorem. And this is something I know how to pronounce in Russian, since that's something I learned in school, but I might screw it up in English. But there is a hypot function, which is like for hypotenuse, I assume. So what we're going to do is we're going to do distance between x points of those two, x values of those 2 points, and then we pass distance between y points. P1 y. Cool. So this is, I think it's called Pythagorean theorem. Yeah, genius. So this is, we take this value and we take this value, and the function we use produces this basically. So let me go for it. Okay, I'm I don't know, it's funny, but nobody said in the chat that they love geometry, so I guess I'm the only one. But that's fine too. Cool. So now we have a function which should calculate distance. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to iterate for each point. I'm going to iterate over all other points. And I'm going to P2, return the distance between those, where we just call distance P2. Cool. And then I'm going to use math.min to get the smallest value. So we iterate over every other point, we get the distance, and then we got the minimum distance. One thing I'm going to do is, because for this point we will iterate over every single point, it will also iterate over itself. The distance will be 0 and minimum value will be 0. So that's not something we want to do. So I'm going to just filter out anything with distance greater than 0. Cool. So this should work, but of course this might not work because it's live coding. So I'm going to put a debugger and see what we actually just put in there. Let's see. Cool. So we, of course, we're getting error. An error, the first thing, because I put a filter on in the wrong brace. Let me move it one brace to the right. So we map, and then we filter. There you go. Now let's see if this works. Oh, so let's look at the list of points. So you can see now they have mean value, which ranges from 2 to 310. There is one 446, and there is one which is 666. And I assume this one is winning. So we can see there is also a smart person who was able to hack it a little bit and get a point outside of the image. So other people, while I'm setting things up, can actually try and do the same. Let me know in the chat how you did this. And this is expected because for the database, which everybody can write from the browser, I can just throw in a debugger statement right here in the writing. Let me remove this debugger, which keeps stopping. Cool. Yeah, so once I click, what prevents me from taking this collection using different UID? I don't know, I can say like chicken or something, probably no exclamation mark. And then I can put X of, I don't know, 600, Y of 600, and then I can say UID is chicken. Okay. Yeah, so now nobody stops me from doing this, and you can see that the point jumped in right here. I'll show you how to prevent this. Right now, one more thing I want to do is I do have a prepared snippet. If I remember correctly, it should go like this. Yeah. So this will be a table. Okay, so somebody is actually moving. Somebody set an interval. Oh no, was it me? Cool. Yeah, so you can see chickens. There's somebody with ID of nothing. So lots of factors straight here. So how are we going to fix this? So Firebase has a concept of rules. And what it means is we can look at what data is being written and only allow it to be written in certain cases. So I'm going to change it here. I'm going to say that when you write to a collection of points, and then next thing, and people with routing are probably familiar with it, you can specify ID, which can be anything. So, but this value, we can later use it. So I'll start with simple. I'll just say read write, and I just say false. So once I publish those, hello, right? Okay, false. Okay. Cool. So now nobody can read or write. Let's check this out. I'm refreshing, and you see like every time I move things, I'm getting like missing permissions error. This is of course not something we want to do in this game. So we are going to check a few things. So what I did last time is it here? Yeah. So first of all, I used arbitrary ID for the document. So I can put chicken here. We do not want that. How do we check that? So in the rules, I can say allow read if true. And then I would say allow write if. So what are we checking? So we actually have an access to the request. So this thing we're sending, I can actually check using request.resource.data, and then I can check UID, and this would be, let me close all the other tabs. This would be this. So the data is this object which I'm sending. So UID should be my actual UID. So how do I get it? I just say equals auth dot request dot auth UID. Next thing is here. This is also ID, user ID. Not I don't know why I call it point, but this is the key. This user ID should also equal request auth ID. Cool. So now we don't need to use triple equals. Now we can just publish here. And now if I refresh, it might take some time to propagate. Refresh again. Oh no. Let me see what's going on there. Read if true. So this should be fine. Sometimes it takes some time to propagate. So while it does that, I'll do a few other things. So I was able to override ID. Now I cannot do it anymore, but now I can override coordinates. How do I prevent that? Very similar. So I would go with and request resource data X. It has to be, like I use 600, it has to be less than 500. Also, it has to be greater than 0 because somebody smart can just put it like -1000 and win. That's not something we want to do. And exactly the same thing we are going to do for Y. So it has to be less than 500 and then greater than 0. I kind of lost chat in the process, but nobody actually wrote anything, so it's good. Cool. So now we should be hacker free, and hopefully the rules will propagate by now. Let me confirm. I'm allowing to read always, and I'm only allowing to write in this specific case. Cool. So let's hope it works. Oh no. For now, let me just confirm it's what I think. So I'm going to just roll it back to allowing to read and write always. Close this. Yeah, okay, so looks like we're stuck, so it may take some time. I haven't seen this before, but that's a bit weird. I'm gonna try something else. So while we're here, while it's kind of cool to have this UI, which gives you auto suggestion and everything else, often it even gives you like some kind of version control, so you can easily roll back to other things. Oh, I think I know what's happening. Let me check now. Yes, I think what's happening is I put the incorrect collection name, which I wish was in the auto suggestions. So now this should work. But one thing I wanted to say is you can also manage version control for those rules in GitHub if you want. So there is a file called firestore.rules where I can just put the same thing. And then next time I run Firebase deploy, it will actually override that. Cool. So let's see how it works and whether it works. All right. So now everything is back. Now we can see there are still some old points which are off the grid. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go and remove the collection. And just one thing I'll do before that. I'll show another level of granularity on the permissions. So here we say allow write in this case. But what I'm going to do is it's very easy to look at where other people place stuff and then move their point around. So I'll only allow putting point once. So allow create for all those conditions. And I only allow writing, well, never, if false. Just before that, I want to confirm that I can move my Foxy. Yeah, it seems to work. Cool. So now when I publish it, I should not be able to move my Fox once I placed it. However, if I go to data, I find my ID there, which is JL right here. I can delete the document. Boom, now it's removed. Refresh, and now I can put my Fox, but only once. You can see there are no errors. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm going, and of course, one thing I would like to mention is Of course, you can handle those permissions in JavaScript, those errors in JavaScript. So you can catch this error, and instead of ugly console message, you can either just ignore it, or you can put a message saying you can only move once. So now what we're gonna do is one last thing. So we have this table right here, and I'm going to sort it. I'm going to sort it by the number of, by the minimum distance, so we can see who is actually winning. And then after this, we can actually play the game, and let's see how it works. So I'm going to sort. It takes 2 arguments, and then we return the difference between the minimum distance b min minus a min. So now this should sort us, and we can see that this person with ID starting with Q is winning. I assume it's this one. Right. So next thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to disable, delete the collection, the points collection. It will just, so I'm safe, it will ask me to enter collection name. Cool. So now everybody please go and put your points on the map. Keep in mind that you want to think it through, and you want it to be furthest away from everybody else. I'm gonna go and put my Foxy, let's say somewhere here. And this is also an interesting move, because now many people will not want to go there, because this is kind of a losing move. So just by announcing where my fox is, I should, in theory, if everybody acts rationally, which like somebody will just want me to lose, which is fine, and will go next to me. But if everybody acted rationally, then there would be like a big clear field here. I have no idea if that will happen, or maybe somebody will just put something next to me. Cool. So I'm gonna switch to chat, and I'm going to wait it out. So if anybody has any questions, now would be a good time for a quick one question, or if any thoughts, anything else. I'm specifically not showing where all the points are. So I'm gonna give everybody like 10 more seconds, and then I'm going to go to rules, and I'm going to disable writing. So cool. So now we all can read, but none of us can write. So one thing we could potentially have done is instead of going to rules and disabling it manually, I would be able to go with something like root.data, and then maybe I'm doing it incorrectly, but the point is I could go to the database and look at some field in the database, which I would be able to write and read from the UI, from the browser. Just I wrote and read all the other data. So now I'm going to hit publish, and now I'm going to go see who actually won. I don't know what happened to extra curly brace. I'll just copy paste this. Allow. Cool. So, and I'll allow read if. How do you manage having different rooms, several games at the same time? So this would actually be pretty easy. Let me finish the rules, and I'll actually let me show it right now. So you can see that right now, what I'm doing is I'm calling my collection points. But what I could have done, I would have, say, collection points dot collection game ID. And then the game ID, I don't have it right now, but I would say window.location. I don't remember, like some kind of query params, for example, .id. It's not a real way of doing things, but basically this way you can go and you can say, oops, uh, URL question mark game ID equals, I don't know, 1 to 3, for example. And this way everybody would get their own game. And of course you can also manage, you can go deeper and you can allow people creating those ID, but you can see how like those are basically all the changes needed to allow multiple room for this. Let me remove it because people already played. Cool, so last thing, now I'm gonna finally allow read if false, allow write if true, match points point. Okay, so hopefully this will work. Genius. Okay, and now we can see who won. I'm gonna refresh just in case. Of course, right here, read here. Right. So luckily for me, I'm making all those mistakes, but we don't have $1 million prize for this game. So if somebody won last second, that's probably fine. Cool. So let's see. So lots of people went into the center to my foxes. So I'm no way I'm winning. And then there are the person with this number, with this ID, is got like 392 points. So just to confirm, what we can do is I'll just go back, and while rendering this thing, I'm gonna also render the index. So I just say indexes here, and then also I can do point.min. So now when I refresh, we can also see like who is doing how. Cool. So I'm not sure where I calculated this incorrectly, but it seems like the index is not doing really well. But let me find the one with the. So it seems like this is doing the best, but I think I just calculated things incorrectly. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna do existing snippet, which should work, where it will calculate it better. Let's see if this actually works. State of points. Okay, let's see this work. Cool. Okay, so I'm gonna analyze this later, and I'm gonna send the result to Berta. So if you wanna see if you won or not, I would say put your ID there. Let me see. Maybe it's reversed. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna look. I don't wanna waste everybody's time. But the Firebase part, not the part where I know algorithms seem to have worked pretty well. We were able to update things in real time. We learned rules. We load images from storage. We did anonymous auth. And the whole thing was uploaded to hosting, and everybody was able to access it. My talk went much further than somebody suggested to print UID. I can print UID. Yeah, so it's been like 1 hour of live coding, so my brain is boiling right now. But printing UID should be pretty easy. We need p.uid, not my UID, right? Cool. So now this is not very readable, but it seems like it works. Yeah, I'm curious now what's the, I think I probably screwed up the distance function. Let me do this snippet. right? And now that should work. Okay, cool. So now this seems sensible. Okay, so the person with ID of, so my geometry knowledge actually screwed me over, but that should be fine because I'm not in school anymore. So let me remove UID because we have UIDs here. Cool. One thing I want to do is I want to round the mean right here, round. So it's not such a long number. Which it didn't. Doesn't matter. So we can see that number 0 is this point, which went into the corner and hid really well. And then number 1 is in the other corner. And now let's see who is number 30. Let's see, it might be me actually. Yeah, this is like this the most central point is number 30. So apparently I'm like really losing here. Yeah, but this is the idea. So you can see like you can create games pretty quickly. One thing which is we want to see is the usage. So we want to see because Firebase is free up to a certain number. So you can see that here we actually had 30K reads. So we consumed like a quarter of the limit. You can do up to 50,000 reads. So there are ways to optimize it. So it's cleaner and nicer, but I clearly didn't have time to touch on it. But you can see how stats are updated in pretty much real time. You can see reads, you can see writes, you can also see deletes. This is when I went and deleted all the records. You can see like at most we have 78 connections, which is interesting because I only see 30 points. So maybe some people just connected to a book and didn't click. I see, or maybe people wrote and then left. Hard to say, but you can see that the stats are pretty detailed. And I think at this point I'm done. So I around the table value, not circle. Oh, thank you. That explains it. Okay, this confused me a lot. Math round mean. Let me fix that. Cool. Yeah, and then if you get games which are more turn-based, not like people clicking like crazy and moving things around, then this would be like really cool, and also like the real-time part. Cool. So now we can see. So yeah, so this one is like 132. This is 130, and I have 9, which is funny, but I expected that, so I'm not considering it a loss. Yeah, we consumed 13,000 reads or 50,000 available. Yeah, that sounds about right. This is because people clicked a lot, and also some people did like timeout, which made like lots of reads in real time. Cool. Anybody has any other questions? Also, like thoughts on did it make sense? Maybe something didn't make sense. Maybe something was cool. Maybe something wasn't cool. What's the limit of free versions? So 50,000 writes, I think it's per day. 50,000 reads and 20,000 writes. There are like a bunch of docs. So each product has their own limits. I clearly didn't do really well with optimizing things. So yeah, 13K is a lot, and you clearly can throttle reads and make it better. We can look at storage usage, which is downloading image, where the bandwidth is just 30 megabytes, 200 requests. Half of them probably was me refreshing. We can look at hosting usage as well. So we can see we have 10 gigabytes, so we only hit 10 megabytes out of it. And the same with traffic, we have 10 gigs of traffic, we have 150 megs. Cool. So the next question is it possible to download the database and work with it locally? So I think the answer is yes. We have a new thing which I didn't have a chance to try, but it's called Firebase Emulator Suite. And the idea is, my understanding is you can, you have a Firestore emulator, you have real-time database, functions, hosting, PubSub, so you can run all the stuff locally and run all the tests. Once you reach the maximum usage, does it deny access? Yes, this is correct. So it has some grace period, and also it allows you to set up warnings. But once you hit the maximum, if it's free version, it will just basically stop taking requests. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. And again, like if you are gonna have like a real-time game where like people click a lot, then it might be not the best option. But if it's something like turn-based and it's or like something where people don't have to click 1,000 times, then it's fine. How Firebase notify the user that the app has reached the limit. So yeah, so it gives you an error which you can handle in your own way. So you can basically show a UI message to users saying like, sorry, we hit the limits. The question is, does it include some JMS brokers? I'm going to look it up because I don't know what this is. This is so I assume it's some kind of like event bus like thing, which yeah, I'm not familiar, and I do not think that we have that. But I'm pretty sure Google Cloud has something like this. I would search there. And yeah, Google Cloud kind of can interact with Firebase. They reuse the same projects. So you can create like Google Cloud project and then use the same project with Firebase, and billing I think is similar. But yeah, I'm gonna look up what JMS broker is later. I have no idea. Cool. I'm gonna like wait for 30 more seconds if anybody has any other questions. Will you upload the code to a repo? Yeah, I can do it right now. Okay, so apparently there is a git commit. All right, so I'm gonna go create a repository and upload it while I'm waiting for questions. New repository. It's public, I don't need anything. Okay, I've done this. Keep. Okay. Cool. So the repository is uploaded. So this is actually a legit question. You might need to remove credentials. So the cool thing is you don't. So first of all, it's public just because it's in the browser. Actually, sorry, I have a baby here who wants to express himself. Hi, baby. Yeah. So I basically can look at the code and I can see all the code. So this information is public. It's actually safe to put it in the repository. And another thing is we actually not, like for this specific case, because we're using Firebase hosting, we actually don't have to put any credentials anywhere because we're using this import where hosting takes care of it and gets all the keys for us. So they don't even go into repository. Somebody thinks that my baby disagrees. Yeah, so he comes to me and he closes my laptop so I can play with him. He's very small, but that's like one thing he can do. How would you define the data models with Firebase? So you kind of generally don't. It's mostly kind of like in your head and rules. But of course, you probably want to have some docs. I think there were some ways of defining protobufs and then generating rules out of that. But let me see, Firebase rules, protobufs. Yeah, so protobuf rules gen thing. So this is another way of defining models. In this case, yeah, so Firestore is kind of non-relational database, no SQL. So technically you don't even need a schema, but although you of course have to have rules so hackers don't hack your things. But yeah, there is no strict schema like you would expect in a SQL-like database. Will the video be available? Yes, so this is being recorded, so you can definitely see it later. I'm okay, so yeah, so Roberto is streaming live, perfect. The questions for channel name, okay. The resolution is not the best, later we'll upload the better one. Okay, that's cool. Cool, I'm gonna take the GitHub URL, I'm going to paste it. This didn't upload, let me add, okay, let me push it again. Cool. Yeah, so basically what you are mostly interested in is this index file. And I'm going to go and post it in the chat right now. Cool. I think that's it. I don't see any more questions. It was a pleasure giving this talk, and thanks a lot for being active and asking questions.
Kirill, thank you very much. I have to say it was really interesting, and I think everyone appreciated this introduction to Firebase. Okay, so
Cool. Awesome.
thumbs up for Kirill. Thank you very much, and now it's time to code. So we can say happy coding, everyone, and please, if you have any feedback, feel free to reach Kirill, or if you want another session like this, for sure we can prepare. So feel free to suggest the topics. Okay. So thank you again, and I think it's safe if we leave it here, right? Yeah.
Leave what here?
So we stop
Oh yeah,
now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you everyone. Bye bye.
Bye bye.